Hello! Human life is full of various tragedies. Serious illness and death of one's own child is an ordeal that is extremely difficult to endure. But maybe there's a universal solution even for events like these. Future technology is developing rapidly. What if it were already a reality? The following story is about that. The future of Earth is grim. Climate change has led to the flooding and destruction of coastal cities such as New York, Amsterdam, and Venice, as well as mass migration and terrible famine. Developed countries have maintained their prosperity by limiting births and making use of robots, which do not require food nor energy to run. Professor Alan Hobby gives a lecture about artificial intelligence in an auditorium full of people. With a stab of a knife, he demonstrates the pain reflex of a robot girl who looks no different from humans. This is a new type of robot, capable of imitating emotions and thoughts.
What did I do to your feelings?
You did it to my hand.
But they can't genuinely feel. The professor wants to go a step further and create a robot that knows how to love. And since there are different kinds of love, he takes the love of a child for a parent as the basis, which, according to him, is unconditional and never goes away. The perfect, never ill, never changing robot child will also be in demand by childless families. And for these robots themselves, new inner worlds of feelings, intuition, and even dreams will open up. A woman in the audience raises a question of ethics. What responsibility does the parent of such artificial child hold towards it? After all, there is already a growing hatred and mistreatment of robots in society. This makes the professor think, but he replies, God created Adam to love him. Meanwhile, Henry and Monica Swinton go to the clinic where their son Martin is asleep in a cryo chamber. He is ill with an incurable disease. Monica sits down to read him a book, and the doctor advises the fussy Henry to worry not about his son's condition, but that of his wife, who has been suffering from depression for 5 years. They don't know yet that Professor Hobby and his assistants are looking for the perfect family for a robot baby, and the Swinton family is just the right pick for them.
I can't accept this! There is no substitute for your own child!
Monica is shocked. Her grief turns to anger at Henry, who has agreed to take the robot. However, she can't simply refuse the proposition and decides to try. Henry explains that the boy will not consider them parents until they activate a special code. But after the code is on, there is no turning back. If they don't like living with the robot child, it will be impossible to disable his senses, and the company will simply dispose of him. Monica signs the contract. Although David looks like an ordinary boy, he does not behave like a human being at all. Silently, and without tiring or interrupting, he observes Monica in her daily activities, frightening her. Gradually, he begins to imitate the actions of adults, learns to play hide and seek, and even laughs. Monica decides to activate the love protocol, and David begins to see her as his mother. He makes her coffee, does everything he is asked to do, and even improvises. One day, he pours an entire bottle of her favorite perfume on himself to smell better.
I love you, Mommy.
After David worries and asks if Mom will ever die, Monica gives him a toy bear named Teddy, an old generation robot that belonged to her son, Martin. It looks like Monica has found meaning in life again and is enjoying it. Suddenly, the unexpected happens. A cure for Martin's illness is finally discovered. The son returns home to find his little electric brother there. Jealousy grows between the boys. They compete to see who Teddy Bear will approach first and which one of them is taller. But this doesn't solve the problem. In many ways, though, they get along. David tells Martin about his first memory, a tailed bird that looked like a peacock. Martin, in turn, asks his parents to read them a book about Pinocchio before sleep, adding that David will definitely like it. And indeed, the robot boy is enthralled by an episode from the book about how a blue fairy, who comes to people in their sleep, makes Pinocchio's dream come true. She turns the puppet into a real, living boy. Then one day, the brothers compete to see who can eat the most.
David, stop it!
And the robot, who is not allowed to swallow anything, ends up on the operating table. Monica worries about him as if he were her son, and her real son watches it all with hatred in his eyes. Martin promises David that he can make his mother love him more. But first, the robot has to do something. Namely, cut off a strand of Monica's hair while she's sleeping. Of course, the parents wake up at the worst possible moment, and Monica nearly loses an eye. Henry almost breaks David in rage, and afterwards observes that if the boy knows how to love, he must know how to hate as well, even if he's only trying to win love for now. At Martin's birthday party, his guests examine the robot and activate its protective reflex. David hides behind his brother's back in terror and backs away holding him.
Mom!
David pulls Martin to the bottom, but the boy is rescued by the adults. The robot remains lying on the bottom of the pool, while the adults manage to revive Martin. This is the last straw for the father of the family, whose son was once again one step away from death, this time because of a robot. However, Monica cannot bring herself to co-sign David to disposal and comes to a difficult decision. She leaves him in the woods with a toy bear. In tears, she tells him the truth, gives him some money, and instructs him not to approach humans, but to hide among other runaway robots.
I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the world.
In the next scene, we see a perfectly groomed man we do not yet know. This is Gigolo Joe, a robot designed specifically to please women. After completing his task with yet another woman, he heads to fulfill the next order. Except the customer turns out to be dead. Her jealous human lover leaves the scene, framing the robot. Joe escapes and begins to destroy the tracking mechanisms on his body. David and Teddy, meanwhile, wander through the dark woods. The boy doesn't give up hope of getting home to his mother. They stumble upon a truck dumping a bunch of used robots in a junkyard. The runaway robots in need of replacement parts immediately arrive. This is also where Joe turns up, who soon flees from a huge moon-shaped airship driven by people searching for and capturing robots on the run. They're loud-speaking slogans against the iron. On the ground, they're met by bikers. These are robot hunters on motorcycles, who, at the command of their human leader, catch both Joe and David and the others. Teddy finds himself out of the trap, and the friends are separated while the nanny robot calms David down. Teddy follows the airship on his own 2 feet. Humans bring them to the Flesh Fair, which combines a rock concert, beer, and chips with a show of recycling robots into scrap metal. For the amusement of the crowd, the prisoners are launched through burning rings, doused with acid, and hacked in half. David is so different from the others that he is noticed first by one girl, and then the rest of the fair workers. They think of keeping him for some other purposes, when the human leader brings David along with Joe into an arena to give a speech about the cynicism of corporations that play on people's feelings by creating robots that are increasingly indistinguishable from them.
Don't burn me! I'm not gonna hook you!
But after seeing David screaming in pain and fear, the previously crazy crowd begins to sympathize with him, rebels, and demands that the boy be let go. They pelt the arena with objects and break through fences. Because of the chaos that ensues, Joe, Teddy, and David manage to escape. We see Professor Holly's desk with pictures of David on it. The assistants inform him that they found a robot boy at the fair, and this makes him very happy. David says that he's looking for a blue fairy, a woman who will help him become human. Joe invites David with him to the Rogue City, where there are as many women as there are stars in the night. Moreover, in the same city lives Dr. No, who Joe claims knows everything. He wants to repay David for saving his life. They hitch a ride and end up in the city of depraved pleasures. Joe and David make their way through a kind of Las Vegas of the future and end up at Dr. No's place. The questions are not free, so David gives the doc everything he has. The robot manages to fit in 7 questions, and the doctor gives them something of a prophecy, a riddle text that tells them where to look for the blue fairy. The friends must get to the edge of the world, Manhattan. Joe is, however, suspicious. What if this is a human trap to lure the robots in and dispose of them? Humans hate robots, but at some point they will die out and the robots will go on living. Joe offers to let the boy stay with him, but David doesn't see humans as enemies, as he is driven by love.
She loves what you do for her, as my customers love what it is I do for them.
David's dream is still unshaken, except there's a police helicopter waiting for them on the way out. Joe is taken on board. David and Teddy take advantage of the situation by climbing into an empty helicopter nearby and picking up Joe along the way. They fly out to Manhattan. New York is flooded and destroyed, but the heroes still find the exact location from the prophecy, where the lions, the giant fountain statues, weep. Upon entering the building, they see a door on which the same prophecy is inscribed.
Is this the place they make you real?
And behind the door, David meets his clone. So he's not the only one. Not exceptional and not unique at all. In a fit of jealousy and fear, David knocks the clone's head off and proceeds to smash everything around him. Professor Hobby appears and explains that David was being watched and given clues. Yes, it's just an experiment, but David did something no robot has ever done before. Inspired by the tale of Pinocchio and the fairy, he dreamed, loved, and felt. He reveals the truth that David was a real boy, his son. A robot cannot endure so many contradictions and feelings, and its brain becomes overwhelmed. Later, the professor offers David to meet his true moms and dads, the scientists. David follows him and finds himself in a laboratory with hundreds of robots hanging on hooks, each with his face. His first memory of the birds turns out to be associated with the statue outside the lab window. Unopened packages with robots of both sexes and marketing slogans about love finally shattered David's dreams. Losing the sense to live on, he jumps into the water from an enormous height. Is the cruel experiment over? The boy plunges to the bottom of the ocean, but discovers something there that gives him hope again. Suddenly, Joe pulls him out of the water, but the robot hunters are already waiting for them on the surface. Joe asks him, "When you become a real boy, remember me to the ladies when you grow up."
I was.
The poor guy is pulled into the police helicopter with magnets. Goodbye, Joe. David and Teddy submerge again, but this time inside a helicopter that can also become a submarine. Under the water, they see a theme park from the story of Pinocchio. Finally, David finds himself in front of a statue of a blue fairy. A Ferris wheel falls on the helicopter, and Teddy and David are trapped. But the most important thing is that the fairy statue is intact.
Please make me real.
Please, Blue Fairy, turn me into a living boy. David repeats over and over to the silent, smiling statue, even when the street lights go out and she is no longer visible. David utters the phrase over and over again until he himself switches off. 2,000 years have passed. A ship with strange creatures flies over snow-covered Manhattan. They find David, and he is awakened by a touch. Still driven by his belief in a miracle, he approaches the Blue Fairy. David touches the statue, and to his horror, it collapses. The creatures scam what is most precious and rare to them: David's memory of living humans, and pass memories of his family to each other. Earth is now inhabited only by these evolved robots, and humans are extinct. David wakes up in a replica of the Swinton family house, which differs from the real one only in the dimmed lights. The boy looks for his mother, and soon hears her voice. The voice turns out to be that of a blue fairy, and she is no longer a statue, but a hologram. She finally answers David's plea that there is no way she can turn him into a real boy. Through the hologram, the robots report that David is now really the only one of his kind in the whole world, and his mother is no longer alive because 2,000 years have passed. They can reconstruct other people from the DNA they've collected, so he won't be so lonely. But his mom, Monica, unfortunately, can't be brought back.
Do you remember when you cut some of Mommy's hair?
Henry shook me.
And then it turns out that Teddy, who has always been around, has kept the same lock of his mother's hair that David cut off of her head. Unfortunately, as the robots explain, people recovered from DNA live only one day, and the process cannot be repeated. David wants to believe that his mother will be special and live longer, and eventually convinces them to recreate her. The robots admire the abilities of humans to give life meaning, and the way David has adopted this from them. This is exactly what the robots are looking for in trying to recreate humans. The dawn comes, and the robot invites David to meet her.
Would you like some coffee? Just the way you like it.
Yeah, I'd love a coffee.
The next day becomes a perfect day for the boy, who finally feels real, and nothing reminds him that he is just a robot. Monica asks no questions about the past, but simply enjoys the moment. They play together and celebrate David's birthday by blowing out the candles on the cake. The best day of his life ends with his mother saying, "I do love you, David. I have always loved you." After that, she falls asleep and never wakes up again. And then David, having finally earned love, fell asleep peacefully with her, while Teddy guarded their sleep. As always, you can find the movie title in the video description. In the meantime, tell us what you think in the comments. Should the creator of the robots that are indistinguishable from humans be responsible for their fate? And would you activate the love protocol if your robot vacuum cleaner had one? Don't forget to like the video, and see you in the next session.